Hello there. I'm so happy you found this video. The topic today is shame. And there are some questions about it, like why do we feel shame? Why could shame be a problem? And why does it hinder us today in expressing us the way we want to? And also, why does it hinder us being in really deep relationships with other people and ourselves? So it's actually quite an interesting thing, this tiny feeling. And when I say it, it's like, it's not tiny. You know that. Shame is one of the worst feelings we can feel. And there is a good reason for it. I come to that in a moment. What I want to tell you also is I have created a masterclass just about this topic. What is shame about? Why do we feel it? Why do we suffer from feeling it? And how can we resolve these problems? And when I say problems here, I talk about stuff that is going on for probably decades in your life. Something like when you were ashamed as a child, how it still affects you today and why it still does that. And in this masterclass, I created some videos, some theory about why we all have it. And then also I created a workbook where you can, work with yourself, figure out like, have you been shamed a lot in the past? Is it still a problem for you today? And also some exercises, how you can resolve these patterns. And then I have created some self-hypnosis for you that you can listen to in the course, or you can download them for you and listen to them wherever you are, whenever you have some like 20 minutes time for yourself, that you can listen to those self-hypnosises, and they will help you resolve a lot of these patterns in your subconscious. Because even if you figured it out in your conscious, if you do know what it's about, doesn't mean that your subconscious has the same information. So sometimes it does need an update. And I have created really powerful self-hypnosis for you that will work, and that will also show you how I work as a coach, as an inner balance and self-transformation coach, how I can support you in your journey and in whatever you would like to change in your behavior or in your beliefs, in your patterns. So talking about this, what you do need is you need an email address, and you need to create a password for the platform where I have the masterclass uploaded to. So if you click on the link in the description, you will get there. You only need an email and your password. Create one that you can remember. And that's it. I don't want any money from you. I want you to understand what shame is about. I want you to have a chance to get to know me, and I want you to resolve a lot of these patterns for you. So if you'd like to do that, please click into the description down below, and be part of the process, be part of my masterclass. And I'd be happy if you're there. But I'd also be happy if you stay with me for this video and see what it's actually about. So, why do we feel shame? There is a good reason to it, and it comes, well, like a lot of things actually, it comes out of our past. In most of human being time, the time that we've been here so far, we lived in small groups, hunter-gatherer groups, like 15 to 50 people in one group. And we did that even in times before we really had a language that we could communicate in. So why were these groups effective, and how did they work? They did work on emotions, and they did work on bonding. How did the people bond with each other, and how would we behave with each other? How could we stick with each other? How could we make the group thrive? And how could we prevent the group from falling apart? And even back then, these groups would have had social norms, social rules, ethical and social structural ideas, how we would wanted to live with each other and what would be okay to do and what wouldn't be okay. Even before we had like written law and judges and lawyers and all of that and police, we would have had norms that helped us be in this group together. And how could nature help us there? It gave us a feeling, and the feeling is shame. Because when do we feel shame? We do feel it when when that's the word, when we violate the rules. That's when it happens. And either it happens when we do it by ourselves. Let's say there is a rule in your family or in society that you violate against, you will have a feeling of shame because you know that wasn't okay. And that helped us actually, back in those times, stick to the rules. And it still helps us stick to the rules. That's how our children work. We in our family, or you and your family, you will have rules. They don't even have to be written down, but you will stick to a certain agenda. And if your kids violate those rules, they will feel shame because they know, oh my God, I did something that isn't okay. Mom and dad will be so angry with me or whatsoever. It will not feel good for them. And you know it because you have probably experienced the same thing when you were young. So that is one thing about shame. It was actually a really good concept, and it still is. It keeps us playing by the rules. That's great. That's the way we can live with each other. The problem is shame has been also used by institutions, like, for example, the church, but also by parents and the way they treat kids to make them be obedient. Because it works. You can use shame as an instrument to make someone else obedient. And badly enough, a lot of predators know that and use exactly that. If you ever read something about sexual harassment and how pedophiles make their victims shut up, it's shame. That's how they do it. So as much as it's a helpful feeling, it is also something that is really bad when it makes us just obey to whatever is happening, and it makes us obey to people we look up to in a way. It makes us obey to, for example, when I said the church, it makes us obey to priests and the institution of the church. It makes us obey to teachers, to parents, to other adults, to other children as well, because children can shame each other or adults can shame each other. It works. And that is in some ways really good and in some ways really bad. So if you have ever heard one of the sentences, I will read them to you because I haven't heard them in English when I was a child, but I heard some in German. And believe me, shame was used by my parents. And I'm not sure if they really wanted it, if that was their intention, but they did use it. And maybe you have also had moments when you, as a parent, have felt shame. That could be, for example, when your child is throwing a temper tantrum somewhere outside, somewhere in a supermarket, in a restaurant, in a cafe, wherever you are, where people are around, and your child will be doing something that you know isn't adequate for the social norms and rules, or you think it is not. That's enough, even if it isn't, but you think it isn't. Then you will have felt ashamed. And it wasn't a good feeling. And I'm pretty sure it will have made you react to your child in whatever way. So stick with me. I'll look at the sentences. They are, for example, something like, why can't you ever do anything right? Or, I can't believe you made such a mistake. Don't you feel ashamed? Or, you're bringing shame to our family with your actions. Or, after all we have done for you, you still manage to disappoint me. That is actually a really bad one, I think. And then also, and that is one that I heard a lot when I was a child, is the, what shall the others think about us? And funny enough, when I was a child, I already thought like, what do I know what the others think about us? And that is a fun fact on the side. You can't influence what other people will think about you. And you will say like, huh, that's not true. Sure, you can behave really nicely. You can be the nicest person on earth. You can be a people pleaser, maybe, for example. You will do anything what anyone ever wanted from you. Still, even if you are the nicest person on earth, there will be people hating you for the way you behave, for the way you speak, for the way you look, for whatever. You cannot influence what will happen in their head, in their thoughts, because you don't know their subconscious. You don't know their belief systems. You have zero idea about that. And I mean, look at people like, and any person you can think of, basically. And even if you take really controversial people, I mean, look at the Dalai Lama, for example. Heaps of people would say, oh yeah, that is a really good guy. He has such charisma, and what he talks about, it does touch my heart. And everything he says, I can relate to, and I understand what it's about. He will have heaps of people that think he is a really horrible person. Look at someone really controversial like Trump, for example. There are people loving that guy. There are people supporting him. And there are people who will do the exact opposite. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong here. I'm saying the only thing you can do is be your authentic self. You are the only person you have to live up to. You have to look into the mirror when you come home. And if you see your authentic self, that's it. That's the only thing you can do. And of course, if you want to be friendly, be friendly. You will for sure get a different response to when you behave in a friendly way than when you behave like the last, you know? But it doesn't matter, because you cannot put an inception into other people's minds. You don't know what they will take from you. They can see you and think, what's wrong with that person? Why is that person so nice? There must be something going on. Oh, I don't like that. You don't know. So that is one thing I think is important to know, this idea of what shall the others think about us? We don't know. We can't influence that. And that is something that we do not necessarily need to use as a value for us, as a norm for how we want to live. The norm should be, I need to be okay with what I'm doing. I think I did it the way I want to do it. It's me. I'm authentic. I showed up. I did the best I could do, and that's it. So that is a side note. We are coming back to shame and kids, because that is the big problem. When we felt ashamed as a kid, and when it was used in our upbringing by our parents or an institution like school or church, and even if they didn't do it on purpose, it did leave marks in us and in our subconscious. And these marks have a really difficult pattern that comes with them, and that is guilt because usually what happens with shame is we are trying to fit, right? That's what it does. We are trying to fit in. We are trying to obey. We are trying to be something. But when that happens to a child, when the child feels shame, the child will always think, and even if that wasn't intentionally from whoever did it to that child, but the child will always question him or herself. It will always be a question about self-worth, and it will always be disruptive for self-worth and self-love, because the ideas that come after the, oh, something happened, or when someone tells you something really badly that you feel ashamed of, the ideas are, why am I wrong? Why don't I fit? Why can't I be right? Why can't I be the way you want me to be? Especially when you get shame from your parents and you get it on a regular basis. As a child, you will always think, I am not right the way I am. I need to change to be better. I need to change to be the version that my parents want. And that will make your self-worth and self-love shatter. That is 2 problems already. But the next one is the guilt problem. Because whatever happened to us, especially when there are situations that someone else is involved with, we will come to that guilt, let's say, carousel, something that is going on and on and on in your head, something like, why did I do that? Why did it happen to me? Why did I need to be in this situation? Wouldn't there have been a thing that I could have done that it didn't happen? Why did that predator pick me? Couldn't I have prevented it in a way? It was my problem. It was my fault that I was there at that point in time. Couldn't I have left 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later? Couldn't I have prevented something? It's always me, me, me. I'm guilty. That's what comes after the shame. And the problem is this I'm guilty and this carousel in your head that is basically spinning around and asking again and again and again, what could have been different in the situation? What could you have done different in the situation? And so on and so on and so on. It keeps you in the past. It keeps you in scenarios. It keeps you somewhere, but not in the here and now. As long as your mind is thinking about all these questions, and sure, there's also a reason why we do that, because if we had a situation that worked really bad for us, it's really good to go through the process once and figure out, how can I react in a similar situation if that happens in the future again to me? Okay, I've found a solution to that. Check. That's why our brain does it. But with this guilt and the shame problem, there is never this check moment. You will always come back to a different scenario and a different scenario, and you play it again and again and again. And the fun thing, it's not only for the past, it can also work for the future. So you will be in scenarios all the time, anywhere, but you will not be in the here and now. You will not be connected to yourself. And if we are not connected to ourselves, how shall we have relationships with others? So immediately, basically, and you might have felt it, when you get into a shame situation where you experience shame as an adult, let's, for example, come back to the kid has the tantrum in the supermarket situation. When you're in that situation, you will feel that something changes in you, and it will get really difficult to stay in the relation, in the bond with your child. It can easily happen that you completely shut down. And that is by nature the problem with shame, because feelings on our nervous system level have use patterns to be resolved and give us different ways of energies. If you ever heard about fight or flight mode, there's also the freeze and the shutdown. So there are feelings like, for example, anger, rage. Anger and rage give you heaps of energy. It makes you fight. Okay. There are also feelings that make you also get you a lot of energy that, for example, make you flight. It happens and it's really great. But there are also feelings, and not too many, but shame does it. It shuts you down. Shame takes all the energy away from you. And it does get you out of whatever you were in beforehand. Like if you were in a loving relationship with your child beforehand and you feel shame, it shuts you in yourself, but it shuts you out. You can't stay in the relation with your child. The same goes basically for your child too. When the child will feel shame, they will shut down too. And what we can do as parents is we can come back to them. Like when our children did whatever's, okay, they didn't obey the rules, for example, or we said something and we didn't have the intention to make them feel ashamed, but it happened anyway. Go to your child, talk to them, and get them out of that shame cycle, because when they stay in there, they can't be present with themselves and they can't be back into the bond with you. You can't be in a good relation if you're always somewhere else, if you're always thinking about feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, feeling this, that. Here's a scenario, there's a scenario. How shall that happen? And that is why I created the course. The course will help you break through some of the patterns, and you can do that on your own. Of course, the course is not a one-in-one coaching. That would be a different scenario too, but it does help. I know it does, because for me, I have been growing up with a lot of shame, and I have developed a strategy that you, and subconsciously, of course, I didn't ask for that strategy, but I developed a strategy. It's an inner critic. Maybe you've heard of that before. It's that voice in your head that is really not nice to you, that basically tells you when you've done something, I don't know, stupid in a way, like you dropped a glass of water and created a mess, that your inner critic will tell you like, you're not worth anything. You can't do anything. What a stupid brat you are. What the beep are you doing here? Why can't you at any point in life do something right? If you've ever heard something similar in your head, that's your inner critic. And that is what my subconscious used to keep me safe, basically. My subconscious gave me that inner critic to already be 5 steps ahead all the time, so that people from the outside couldn't shame me. So the inner critic tries to make me be perfect. And as you might have already figured in this video, I don't tend to be perfect any longer. I don't care. And that is why I know that these exercises and the self-hypnosis, I know that they work because they work for me. I mean, of course, I also had one-on-one coaching, but I also used a lot of self-hypnosis. I mean, the thing is, I am a hypnotherapist and know how to hypnotize someone else. So I also know how to hypnotize myself, and I know how to, change my inner world. And I've done that for some years now. And this inner critic in my head is not that loud any longer. Sometimes it still pops up, but actually most of the time it doesn't. Now I have someone in my head that is quite funny, actually. And yeah, it's totally fine with me not being perfect in any way. And like, for example, it wasn't that long ago that I locked myself out of the house. And I know beforehand I would have destroyed myself inside. Like, how stupid can you be that you leave the house without the keys? That wasn't prepared at all. And I just stood in front of the door, and when I figured it out, I just laughed. I just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And I thought it was a tiny bit hilarious. I mean, of course, it wasn't great. I was my time was quite tight, and I was late, and I didn't want to be late. And there was a tiny cascade after it, but I didn't blame myself for it. I just thought, wow, that's an hilarious situation. Maybe I can use that someday and talk about it and have another laugh about it. And that's it. And because I know it works, because it worked for me, it can work for you too. So if you want to do something about your feeling ashamed, you're not being present, you're probably having problems with being in relation with someone else, having trouble with your children here and there, having trouble at work, take the course, use this class to understand more about yourself and your inner world and change the patterns for you. I'm happy to see you there, and thanks for watching the video.